light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. With me today on the show, I have my friend Vendella Sawyer, and we wanted to scratch the surface on the complex topic of being mixed race. And I often tell people, don't chase the categories, because no individual is the embodiment of a category. But the world in which we live seems to be so obsessed with its categorization that many people, most people, in some instance or another, are not treated fairly because of the category that someone else has assigned to them. When I was in graduate school, anytime, and I don't want to spend this whole half hour talking about racism, but it bothered me that any time the subject of racism came up while I was in graduate school, only configuration anyone was willing to recognize was a white perpetrator and a black victim. And yet the more I contemplated and studied racism, the more I realized it's not about the identities, it's about the nature of the actions. When someone is mixed race, though, first of all, it is often invisible to people around them. People have no idea what they're looking at when they look at another person. But then it becomes this added subjective layer of, yes, but what does it mean? Because there are meanings and significances and even histories that people associate exclusively with particular categories. It kind of baffled people, for example, when I said that one of my ancestors was killed in a forced relocation, because as far as I know, I don't happen to have any Native American background in my ancestry. And that was the only category with which people in graduate school associated the notion of being killed during a forced relocation. I think there are very few things that anyone can point to that are the exclusive experience of any particular group.
Well, I look at it this way. We've all experienced that. They say, well, okay, I have to explain me. Without a past, there's no future, in my opinion.
Without a past, there is no future.
You have to know your past in some way.
I guess that makes sense.
Was
it the movie Blade Runner, I think?
Correct.
Where they had androids, and the thing that made them emotionally unstable is that they didn't have any past history.
Right.
They had no personal history, and so they were emotionally unstable.
And they didn't know really what their purpose was, or where their purpose came from.
And so that makes me wonder if it helps people to be more emotionally stable if they know their history, if they know who Grandma and Grandpa were, and how they lived, and the struggles they overcame, and how we got to this place where we are now through doing some things right and some things wrong, and one way or another we got here.
Well, for me, it was a good thing that I came from a family on my mother's side and my father's side, where we knew each other's history.
Okay.
Okay. Where my father's side is Irish, Scottish, Indian, African American. I can tell you.
Irish, Scottish, Indian, African American. Okay, that's just your father.
That's my father.
Okay.
My mother's side.
Okay.
Indian, African American, and Caucasian.
And Caucasian.
Yes.
So 3. So you had 7 different ethnicities
that make up Vendella.
In your parents.
That make up Vendella.
Okay.
Yeah.
In my case, all 4 of my grandparents came from 4 different countries. Nobody married somebody from their own country. And so it's like, this is diversity. This is inescapable diversity.
Well, this is something I really have a issue with. It's when someone says, well, especially in the United States, well, the only ones that were slaves were African Americans. No. Every walk of life that lives in the United States The United States is this nation of immigrants that we came over here, except for even where the American Indian.
Well, depending on how far you go back, because
Okay.
even the American Indians were immigrants.
That's what I'm saying. I was getting ready to say that. But every walk of life, every nation at one time has been enslaved.
And the entirety of human history is one people group displacing another at various intervals.
Right. It's not a black and white prejudice that bothers me the most.
Mm-hmm.
The one that bothers me the most is the one that's within the African American community.
That makes sense too.
Because
When people ask me about racism, I say it's the Inuit and the Eskimo, the Hutu and the Tutsi, the Koreans and the Japanese, the Crow and the Sioux. I mean, there's in every single continent and people group, and all, the French and the German, there's people living right next to each other for hundreds, if not thousands of years that are at war with each other. And it's time to say, enough. We don't need to do this anymore.
Correct. But all of that is within me from my background makes me who I am.
Mm-hmm. And I would say the diversity gives you more empowering things to draw upon rather than less. But the problem I saw in graduate school is that if the reality didn't follow the categorizations, the discussions of racism basically made people blind to what was going on right in front of them. That if there was one Asian student, for example, who talked about how extremely racist her Vietnamese grandmother was toward children who were the product of an American soldier and a Vietnamese wife. That produced a mixed race child, and the Vietnamese grandmother, maybe that was her grandkid, but she was so racist toward them.
No, they are outcasted. And still are.
The very notion of any child being considered an outcast to me is outrageous.
Any notion of any human being outcast is outrageous to me.
Especially children, because they're the most vulnerable.
Children
But equally so, you're right.
Children don't grow up being prejudiced.
They're taught how to be prejudiced.
Right.
Essentially, they're taught how to stop seeing everything they see. I think everyone who's been around children knows how incredibly honest they can be at the most inconvenient times.
Correct.
But to me, that should be rewarded and nurtured, not censored. Even as you teach them tact, teaching a child to lie is, to me, the totally wrong direction. And teaching a child to see only the categories and not the individual, you're basically encouraging the blindness of the human race.
Well, I agree with you on that, but I look at it this way. So we have a whole room of 2-year-olds that have been playing with each other ever since they were 1, all the way to 5.
Mm-hmm.
They're fine. Then all of a sudden, their parents' opinion,
Mm-hmm.
or what they see on television, or what they hear others say, they come into effect with it.
Okay.
First time I ever heard the N-word, I was totally
Okay.
heartbroken. I didn't know what the word meant. It was the way she said it. And I ran home. And I looked at my mother, and my mother says, "What's wrong with you?" I said,
So you responded to the intention, not the actual sound.
I didn't understand the word. It was the tone in which she used when she said it to me.
See, and that to me is the real key to dealing with pejoratives. I don't care if what they say is gibberish. If they're trying to say something that is intended to hurt another person, there's a conflict that needs to be resolved.
Well, my mother didn't resolve the problem.
I'm not saying she did,
She didn't.
and I would say that most of the adults in my childhood didn't either. But I don't worry so much about what words they used as the fact that the adult population when I was a child was willing to tolerate hostility between children instead of saying, "You two sit down, we're going to talk this out."
No, what my mother suggested, now I'm 60. My mother suggested, well, she said what? Well, you're going right back across the street and you are going to either I'm going to spank your behind, or you're going across the street and you're going to have a fight with her. And I'm asking,
Your mother told you to go have a fight.
with my friend. And my mother was friends with her mother. And I'm asking my mother what the word means.
And she won't answer.
No, all she tells me is that you
Oh,
need to go
dear.
back over there and take care of this. And I'm going like, well, but I'm walking across the street going, listen, Mom, I mean, I don't even understand it. It's just the tone in which she used. No, you are going over there. So I'm like, I'm not going. And my mother grabbed me by the hand, took me there, and we sat there, Michelle and I, looking at each other like not knowing what to do. And then our parents, the two mothers, are having an argument, and we're still not understanding. So within 5 minutes, they're still arguing. We're in the back on the swing playing again.
So it's the children who, it's the adults projecting onto the children their own unresolved conflicts.
What it was is that Michelle had heard her father use the word.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a pejorative. It doesn't really matter what it
But
was.
not in the presence of. We were together every day, and
Yeah.
on the weekends, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, our parents were together having outings at the beach, playing cards.
Mhm.
And Michelle had overheard her father use the word in reference to my father and my mother. But when they were in our presence, they never used that, and we never even assumed that. My parents may have, but I never did.
Okay.
And that was the first experience of that. And I,
So getting back to the central topic, though, of mixed race and so forth, what we're basically trying to wrestle with is the existence of people, children but people, who don't fit any of the categories. But the problem is, if there's one area of the country where there is really blatant evil discrimination going on, and they adopt this practice, and then the people next to them say, well, that's the way they do it, so that's the way we do it. They may not have the same discriminatory attitude or idea, but they're adopting a practice that they haven't adequately contemplated. Where did this come from and why is it there?
well, if we just contemplate each other as being individuals based on who we are, and yet would be, I live in the United States, I was born in the United States, and I'm an American.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
So the only things that should be on a driver's license are things that identify criteria relevant to driving a vehicle.
That's what I'm saying.
You know, are you old enough? Are you healthy enough? Do you
Your
have to wear
address.
glasses?
Your date of birth.
I mean, I don't know why you would even need gender on there, actually.
I don't understand that. And see, and that's been effective with me depending on different places that I live. It's because I don't classify myself as being just African American. There's no Cajun word, and
No Cajun word for...
or some people pronounce it, but from where my family comes from, it's Milano.
Milano?
Milano. I am,
Is that like mulatto?
yes. Of
Or are they
different-
the same?
It's basically the same. It's just pronounced differently.
Mulatto or Milano
Depending
refers
on
to
where
someone who
Who
is
is of mixed race.
any mixed race or just specifically,
In my family, it's any mixed race.
okay,
I can just say, I'll just say it this way. I have a family member, and she's always saying, she's Scottish descent, I'm the only Caucasian girl in the family. And my comment to her is, jump in line because you're 245.
245?
You're the number 245 in this family. You're not the one, as you
Okay.
so
So she was
relevantly
saying that
suggest.
out of ignorance of her own family tree.
Right, and she's been introduced to the family.
Okay.
She knows the family, but I said, you know what, really, I'm just kind of tired of hearing it. And then I still even see in my family where my cousins are married to everyone. Chinese, Japanese, Asian, Indian, everybody in our family.
It's just an absolute melting pot.
We're just a melting pot. We're just, goulash.
See, that's where I have sometimes gotten into trying to ask people, how do you self-identify? Because even within any otherwise recognized group, there's no consensus about what terminology to use. I have a black friend who used to live in Lubbock, Texas. He's since moved away from there now, but we had this discussion several years ago. And his response when I said, how do you self-identify, is that he said, I'm black. I'm not an African American because I've never been to Africa.
I agree.
That was his choice.
Right.
Obviously, someone else says, well, another popular term of late is to be a person of color. And I look in the mirror as Sister Who and I go, how much more color do I have to have? Because of course, if someone is a person of color, it implies that there is someone who is a colorless person, which of course makes no sense. But
well, my comment's always been this. It says, well, okay, then we went through the period where, say it loud, you're black and you're proud. That didn't register with me.
okay,
Because James Brown, getting back to us being in the military, came to the base, and he was singing the song, Say It Loud, I'm black and I'm proud. And only people that were dancing to this are the people that were just new at the base for like 3 months.
okay.
Because we didn't
Because
know what he
after
was
3
talking.
months they didn't care?
No, it's because they had left from 3 months from the mainland and they'd heard James Brown's song and they knew what he was saying.
Okay.
But we were sitting there looking at him like, what are you talking about? I'm, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Don't consider myself being black. I'm of a brown complexion.
Okay.
Okay, so it didn't register. So you've got all these people standing there going, huh? What is he talking about? Because we hadn't been told the term, and by being outside the United States, things are censored from you.
Okay.
So we didn't understand why every one of these, like,
So
20
which military base were you on at that point?
at that point, we were in Ramey Air Force Base in Puerto Rico, and then we were also in Guam
Okay.
and the Philippines. But when you're outside the United States, you're censored. So when you're hearing something new, see, I didn't know that people were marching even during the war. But,
Okay.
or that,
Because that kind of news didn't get to the military base.
right, I didn't know who Martin Luther King was.
You didn't know who he was.
No, I knew nothing about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, or
Because
anything.
that was news that was censored from the military bases.
Yeah, wherever you stayed, even if you lived on base or off base.
Okay.
So I grew up not knowing these things. And then here's, when I go home, where my parents were from the South.
Okay.
Okay, I'm so used to being in a neighborhood where there's everybody. It didn't even click with me that when we go visit my grandmother, that we were on the other side of town, and that everyone was of color or African American. It just didn't click with me. I just didn't even worry about it because I was always on the other side of town with my friends that I was used to playing with even when I was a kid.
Okay.
Okay, and
Which was
Greek.
a mixed race area?
no, my father had worked for the Greeks when he was in high school, and we would be over on the other side of town most of the time with my dad's friends. who
So it
were
was an
Greeks.
ethnically mixed neighborhood.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then until I
But
got
your grandmother lived in a part of town that was not ethnically mixed.
completely of color.
Okay.
And when it came time for me to go to high school, even though my father was still in the service, my mother wanted a house built in South Carolina. She wanted a home. Well, when it came time to go to school, I protested. I did not want to go to school. I was frightened. So my mother says, well, you can go to the high school that your father and I went to. Well, it's predominantly black. Oh, no. There's got to be something else.
Because you wanted the diversity with which you were familiar.
No, I was terrified.
Yeah, but you were terrified because it didn't have the diversity that you were familiar with.
I was uncomfortable because I didn't know how to deal with the situation. I had never been in a situation.
So any high school would have been a problem.
No, not any. That high school would have been a problem because it was a black high school
Which meant something to you.
that I had never done.
Okay.
I'm always used to being around every type of person. So it frightened me to...
So you didn't realize until that point how attached to diversity you were.
Right.
Okay.
So that frightened me.
I always found diversity fascinating, so I tried not to be irritating to people by asking too many questions, but it's like, wow, you look so different. Tell me about yourself. And it's like, no, 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 don't do that. That's rude. So why is it rude? I want to know. They're totally different. I think it's
See,
fascinating.
I feel the same way too. If I want to know something about someone, my father says, if you want to know something, ask questions. There's a way to ask a question, and not to be rude or to be polite. It's because I'm interested in knowing about you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know who you are, and I want you to know who I am.
I mean, I still remember the first time I saw an Indian woman in a sari at the supermarket. It was fascinating. It was so beautiful, and I just wanted to know everything about it. But you know, you're not supposed to walk up and talk to strangers, I guess. But
Well, the first thing I did when I started was like, ma'am, please could you tell me where you get your material from? It is so beautiful. Okay?
that would have been a way to
I-
approach it.
I just want to know, but they're very particular not to tell you. It depends
Okay.
on how you approach. Because she was, the first time I ever did it, I thought I really offended her, I think. But I was giving
You
her a compliment.
offended her by accident.
I offended her by accident by asking her, where did you get your cloth from? I just love it. It is so beautiful. She just looked at me like, why would you want to know this? I mean, because it caught my eye and I thought it was beautiful what you were
I
wearing.
met a young man from Russia once and told him I wanted to learn the Russian language. Why would you want to learn that? And it's like, because it's a different language and it has different structures and it has different components, and I like learning foreign languages. Well, he just thought it was too strange that anyone would ever want to learn Russian, and so he refused to teach me. But I was just curious. I find languages fascinating.
Well, I find that my background has always, let's say, anyone who's been strongly prejudiced in any degree, I've always had the ability, I guess because of my background and the way I've been taught by my parents, and my self-individual thought of things, is I've always been able to say, let you look past what you see, and get for you to get to know me as a person.
I don't know that I want to look past it as much as I want to remember that it's not all there is. Because
That's
sometimes
true.
what you see is fascinating, but it's not all there is. There's thoughts and feelings and history and values and language and all sorts, and perhaps even different religious practices.
Well, I like when now, me, it's like, okay, I was the only one in my family that went to Catholic school.
Okay,
That was because a choice my father made,
okay.
not my choice. But even with that going there are some parts of that still stays within my being. But I enjoy finding new things out about people and places and where I go. And when people tell me, says, oh, well, I can't get past this. I mean, what do you mean? I can't learn this language. I says, we have people that come from other countries that watch television and learn how to speak Spanish. Now, I could never learn in school how to speak Spanish when I was in Puerto Rico,
Okay.
which is totally different. I even learned here in Colorado that the dialects are different.
Yeah.
Even in
Puerto Rican Spanish,
is more-
Mexican Spanish,
it's more-
mainland,
It's all different.
the
We
country
don't
of Spain.
pronounce the same thing. Tacos a certain way doesn't mean enchiladas are not cooked the same way. And so if I listen to someone, I can pick up their Spanish
Okay.
if I listen. But when I speak, I don't say it exactly the same way. But I've always been this way. As a person that I am, I want to know a little bit about one language or another that gives me the ability to communicate with a person. If there's a person that's from Taiwan, I've learned to say,
To me, it all comes down to communication.
right, but then,
But
us as a-
communication in truth, not communication between categories.
right.
Because if all you've got is a category talking to a category, there isn't necessarily anything in that that you can apply to your own life.
Well, I may not making myself clear enough. What I'm trying to say is, I want to know all about the world. I want to know if you're from Australia, what part?
Hmm.
Okay, and what did you learn? How was your life when you were in school? and
Both the macrocosm and the microcosm.
everything. I mean, what's the difference between the desert here and the desert there?
Well, see, and that's where I would find someone of mixed race to be an opportunity rather than a challenge. I wish more people saw it that way, though,
I
because it
do
does
too.
not seem to be the world we live in. But once again, we've run out of time. Any final comments before we go?
I feel that everyone should be more open-minded to each other and not judge each other so much. This is 2017, and we are getting...
It's time for us to grow
It is
up.
time to grow up and realize that we are people as one in the world. Not this one from Russia, this one from here, or this person's this or this person's that. Just one being.
Mhm.
With the same goal to have peace, a home, a life, and our family.
And enough. Food, clothing, whatever, to
Right.
have enough.
Right. That's what I want for the world.
Well, that's what we have to keep working toward. Thank you very much for what you've shared today. And thank you for watching.